If you're planning on buying a home in Kansas City, hit pause. There is something happening in the Kansas City market that's catching home buyers off guard. And it's not just one thing, it's the perfect storm.
In this video, we're breaking down the things that home buyers are getting ambushed by in Kansas City, from tornado sirens to wild humidity to surprise tax bills and disappointing school districts, and even HOA neighbors that are judging your lawn. These aren't just small annoyances, they're absolutely deal breakers for some. So
let's kick it off. So let's kick this off with one of the most brutal wake-up calls for homeowners, Kansas City's weather.
Oh boy, let's get into it. All right, so what would you say is the biggest surprise, the winter or the summer for people that are moving to KC?
Man, I would say, I guess it depends where you're coming from, but the biggest shocker is, for me, is the summer. The humidity in the summertime, you're living in air conditioning for a few weeks. Every time you go outside, you instantly sweat. And something that, I like to go out and walk my dog every day, get home from work, go out and walk my dog. And if you're doing that, if you're kind of outdoor active, you're gonna be taking 2 showers a day. There's just no way around it, you know?
Yeah, like my son, he takes 2 or 3 anyway, no matter what the weather. But yeah, the humidity is absolutely brutal. It takes your breath away when you go out and that stuff. And we're getting ready to enter that season right now, so not looking forward to it. But realistically, I think it's probably mid-July to mid-August is right in that heat wave where, temperatures don't get much over 100, maybe 103-ish, but that expression, it's okay because it's a dry heat. Those people in Arizona, here, it is not a dry heat, it's a steam sauna. So it will absolutely zap you and, force you to have a nap during the afternoon.
Yeah, in fact, it was 80 degrees yesterday was the temp, but the real feel was 91. So definitely if you're thinking about coming to Kansas City, you've got that weather app. During the summer, check our app and see what the real temp is, and then see what it feels like when you add the humidity in. And it's nuts. I mean, you're living in it. Your AC's working hard, taking water out of your house. Think of that.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, you're going to need a dehumidifier in the house during the summer, and in the winter, probably a humidifier to put the moisture back in. But in the summer also comes the dreaded tornado, which I know this is a big sticking point for my wife. We've got to have all the plans, the candles, and everything set up for tornado season.
Yeah, so we live right in Tornado Alley, as they say. You remember the movie The Wizard of Oz, Toto and all that happened right in Kansas. So yeah, it's the real deal. There's people, a lot of people have basements in Kansas City. There's some houses now that I've seen just here recently where you can buy these shelters that bolt to the floor in your basement. Have you seen those? It's a metal cage you can get into.
Yeah, we did a video with one in a new construction house. It was pretty cool.
I've got a house that's coming up for sale too, where it's a slab house, and there's a new style. It's actually a bed, and you hit a button, and this bed raises out of the ground and turns into a shelter that you can crawl into. You have to have electricity, obviously. But yeah, there's some really cool options out there.
Yeah, so you're going to want to have a game plan for the tornadoes. I've never really seen one, so I think they're kind of a little overhyped. But if you ask anybody in Joplin about if they're overhyped, they had an F5 tornado come through there and wiped out 50% of the city. So definitely want to take that into consideration when considering Kansas City as your home.
Yeah, we actually had a house get taken out, which is kind of weird because they can come down and just take a house, or they can take a whole neighborhood or a whole block. But we had just a few miles from our office in Gladstone, there was a house that got wiped off the map. So
any other weather-related things that we should be aware of?
Well, the opposite to our crazy stuff. Well, I guess we have some lightning storms and hail and all that kind of fun stuff. So in the springtime and summers when we see most of our hailstorms, and they can just pop out of nowhere. It just looks like a thunderstorm, and then all of a sudden you have hail, and that can destroy your car. So, there's a lot of times where hail's predicted. I'm rushing home to get my car in the garage, so I don't have to deal with that.
Have you seen those covers you can put on your car that will be almost like a mirror mag?
I've seen them online, but I haven't seen one in person.
Yeah, I've never seen one in person either, but
yeah,
it would be good. My son just got his driver's license, and my other one's right behind him. So there's only so many spots inside of the garage. So that's something to consider too, is usually your kid's probably not driving the nicest car in the house, but hail damage is a thing. Yeah.
And then the flip side of the summer and spring, I guess, is the winter, which winters here, for the most part, the average temperature is probably just slightly above freezing. It's usually fairly dry, but we do have those snowstorms that come through, and you got to know how to drive in the snow. It's pretty flat in Kansas City for the most part, so everybody's still getting up on the highways and driving to work. Road crews do pretty good. They do use salt out here on our streets, and they do use sand. I know in some coastal cities and mountain towns, they don't use salt because they want to protect the wildlife in the rivers, like the trout and stuff that are swimming upstream. But here we use salt that's super effective on melting the ice and stuff.
Yeah, we don't care about the wildlife here. Nope. Yeah, the winters, I don't think they're too bad, really. I mean, again, just like the summer, you've got like a month there, basically like, I don't know. It usually doesn't get too bad till Christmas, but it's usually like the January.
And our Arctic blast is usually only like 2-3 weeks max, where it's like 15 below, kind of wind chills, kind of touching that 0 for a couple weeks, and then you're right back out of it again.
Yeah, wind chill 15.
Wind chill, yeah.
Temp usually.
It'll cover zeros.
Yeah. So you got to take all the precautions. You got to take the hoses off the hose bibs outside. You got to, keep the cabinets open and so the heat's flowing all around the house. If you leave, you definitely want to shut off the main water valve if you leave the home for a vacation or something. So if a pipe does burst, you're not flooding out the whole house and the neighborhood. So definitely some precautions, some things that like a rhythm that you just need to get into living here to prepare for all the different weather scenarios.
So the weather might be intense, but the people, surprisingly warm.
Oh yeah, we are. All right, so we're talking about that Midwest friendliness and that community spirit, which, you'd think is a good thing, but some people might get a little bit annoyed by that sort of thing.
Yeah, so how do you think KC locals treat newcomers?
They're going to ask them where they're from. They're going to ask them all kinds of questions, very welcoming. Maybe if you move onto the street, they might bring you like a cake or brownies or some cookies or something, a way to say hi and get acquainted with one another. So you're not going to be able to move in and just be totally anonymous in most neighborhoods in Kansas City.
Yeah, I will say some neighborhoods with established HOAs probably have like a welcoming committee. I know our neighborhood does. So when you get there, the women's club brings you like a thing of brownies to bake and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of neighborhoods like that. Want to get to know their neighbors, know who's living next door, because a lot of people really take pride in their neighborhood and they're looking out for one another and the kids and the neighborhood.
Yeah, I would say that, compared to, I lived in New York and Brooklyn for a while, and my mom would come out to visit me and we'd be walking down the street and she'd be saying hi to everybody and they would look at her like she had two heads, because people just don't do that. There's too many people to say hi to everybody. But in Kansas City, it's not uncommon to be driving down the road and, people will wave at you on the highway. So it can take some getting used to, if you like to kind of fly under the radar and not, talk to people a whole lot. You do have a garage door opener. So one thing people will do is they'll wheel into their driveway, hit the garage door opener, go in, shut the garage door behind them before all the neighbors can swarm, say hi. But yeah, somebody's out working their lawn, you better bet they're going to be, hey, how's it going, from across the street, and probably walk over and say hi to you and, pick your brain a little bit. It just comes with the territory.
Yeah, and like my neighbors, for instance, will like take my trash cans in. I'll get home from work and my trash cans have already been pulled in from the curb. And I know it wasn't my kids that did it because they never do it. So there's some of that, just people looking out for each other and helping each other out.
Okay, now about those taxes.
Taxes?
Taxes. We're not Texas. Yeah, every place has its taxes, but Kansas City has a couple extra. For you folks in Texas or Florida or some of those states that don't have state income tax, Kansas and Missouri both have it. So you're going to pay it.
You're getting nailed. So yeah, not only do we have the state income tax, of course, everybody still got federal, but there's the e-tax or the earnings tax where they're going to get you for 1% if you happen to live or work in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, and then there's also personal property tax. So not only do you get taxed when you earn it, then when you spend it, you also get taxed when you own it. If it's a car or a boat or a trailer, something that needs a license, or your house, you're going to get nailed every year for the ongoing pleasure of owning that item.
And if that's not enough, we have sales tax too. So some of you states like Oregon and Florida that don't have sales tax, well, Kansas City has sales tax and we have plenty of it. So if you are coming from a non-sales tax state, buy your car there and then get here. So you don't have to pay sales tax on those huge items. Now you don't have to pay it on your house, but for a car, yes, and that's a big ticket, like 7-8%, maybe even 9%, depending on what suburb you end up in.
Yeah, so all these taxes can really add up and affect your month-to-month budget. So it's definitely something to take into consideration. You know, when you're moving from Oregon, for example, and you're looking at the house price and it seems really attractive, there may be some hidden costs in there that make up the difference a little bit. So definitely something to consider. Hit us up and talk about it. We can crunch the numbers and, help you find that budget.
Kansas City residents face state income tax, county tax, property tax, and a special 1% Kansas City earnings tax, or the e-tax, if you work or live in the city.
And those property taxes have almost doubled in Jackson County. So you got to watch out for that. Clay County, they've actually gone up too. I just got a friendly letter in the mail saying that my taxes were going up by about 10%. So but Jackson County, people got nailed for almost doubling their tax. So 100% increases. And they actually got in a lawsuit. A lot of homeowners sued the county and they're rolling back some of those taxes because they were so egregious. But something to know that those taxes are on the rise with the inflation that's going on recently.
Missouri property taxes are lower than many states, but sudden hikes have caught even longtime homeowners off guard.
Home insurance costs have gone up by roughly 25%.
Yeah, those insurance price hikes, we have some rental properties, and it's been getting tacked on almost $100 a month got added onto that. So it really, really adds up. So definitely shop your insurance. We have a lot of people we can recommend if you're coming here, but definitely get some quotes on that. Taxes might pile up, but the price tags on homes is still a head turner.
All right, so let's talk about that. The affordability of homes in Kansas City, I think that's what everybody wants to know. And it has been a pro for a long time, but I think that the property values are going up, and it might not always be the case that Kansas City is a below market from some of these other coastal states. Yeah, when we say first-time homebuyer program, what those are is it's a down payment assistance program where normally you have to put 5% down. Well, the state will give you a grant and help you gather that down payment together. I think the grant might be for 3.5%, so you still have to come up with some of it. But you are deemed a first-time home buyer not only if you've never owned a home, but if you haven't owned one for just the last 3 years. So something to consider. There are options to help you come up with that down payment if that's tough for you.
Yeah, but still, the main point is it's still affordable enough for people right out of school, right out of high school, if they get a decent job, can afford to buy real estate in Kansas City. Home prices in Kansas City are lower than in many major metros.
And single-family homes with backyards are widely available within city limits.
Popular areas like Brookside, Waldo, or Prairie Village offer older homes with that charm at lower prices than you find in big cities.
Competition is up and inventory is low, but buyers aren't waiving inspections like they are on the coasts.
Utility costs, ongoing maintenance, and the hidden expenses like grass upkeep and insurance can increase the true affordability, but entry prices remain attractive. Let's talk about one extra Kansas City expense that really throws new homeowners off, and we're talking the care of the yard.
Man, I tell you what, the lawn, especially right now, it's May. So I've been mowing the lawn twice a week. And I used to have a lawn guy, and it was beautiful, come over and mow. And then my son thought it would be a great idea to start up a lawn mowing business. And, after about 6 weeks of doing that, now I mow my lawn again. So that's something to consider is, the cost of a mower and, or the cost of a lawn guy is pretty expensive. On a weekly basis.
Yeah, you're probably looking at, for a normal sized yard in Kansas City, like $40 to $45 a mow at least every week. And you're watering your grass like crazy. Ideally, you have a sprinkler system if you're in one of those neighborhoods where, with the HOA and everything's nice and perfect.
That's not cheap.
So
yeah, that's like $500 a year for the treatments.
But all that green grass and green space does have its perks.
Which brings us to our next talking point, the sense of space and outdoors. So what are the benefits to all this greenery and yard space and stuff? How does outdoor living really compare to those other cities? And what can buyers expect in terms of parks and recreation and that sort of thing as far as Kansas City goes?
Kansas City has done a really good job, especially here in like the last 10 years, like just making sure there's a park close to every neighborhood if you don't have a park in your neighborhood. And now there's been a big focus lately too on getting trails to connect all these parks and trails to go through the county and connect other other municipalities around the lakes, and they've really come a long way on their trails and parks at Kansas City. And then the parks, they're each like major suburb is going to have its huge park for the most part, and then you'll have smaller little city parks and parks in the neighborhood. So there's plenty of stuff to do outside. That's especially on the north side of town. There's just so much more green space and public lakes, conservation ground. Like if you're into hunting and you're looking for, within 15 minutes of almost any suburb of Kansas City, you can get to conservation land that'll have parks and ponds and all that, where you can go out there and just be in the woods and shoot guns and climb trees and do whatever you want. But with all that green comes a swarm of new neighbors, the ones of a six-legged variety.
Gosh, we could talk about bugs for days. So let's do it. Let's talk about
Bugs 3 days. Here we go. Bugs for days.
What are the most common critters?
Mosquitoes are the most annoying. We've got the ticks, which are also pretty annoying and carry diseases. And then some spiders. There's a couple that are poisonous that can get you. And then even, they're not they have no legs actually, but we've got snakes that kind of will be out there in your garden sometimes.
So one of the bugs that gives me the heebie-jeebies is the brown recluse spider. And they're, sometimes they're in older homes and they don't really come out a lot. That's why they're called a recluse. But if they do get you, like say you have a pile of clothes on the floor for a long time and they get under there and you go to pick it up, you kind of have to, watch empty shoes and stuff that have been sitting for a while, because if they bite you, they are poisonous. So yeah, that brown recluse spider, one time it bit my dad in the hand and he almost lost functionality of his hand because it was right here. And his whole hand swelled up so much that his fingers, he couldn't even spread them apart. And if it would have eaten into the tendons, the tissues of his tendons, then he could have lost the functionality of his hand. So it is pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, pretty nasty. And then the ticks, the same way. There's you can get this disease called Lyme disease. In general, if you stay out of the knee-high grass, like walk into the trees in the spring and summer, you're pretty good, because when you keep your yard mowed short, the bugs don't like to come into that because they're just going to get sunburnt. They like to stay in the shade. But if you go tromping through that stuff, you're going to end up with ticks. You're going to end up with all these little things that are chiggers and biting you, and the ticks can carry Lyme disease. And there's people that have dealt with that for years and years and years and still not cured. So it's just something you really want to try to stay away from. So
yeah, there's big bumblebees that are flying around, big hairy ones. They
bangs and horns.
They don't really hurt you to bother you, but the wasps do. The wasps are all up in you and they're creating mud dauber nests up in the house and stuff. So you do have to power wash your house and get the wasps out, or, keep them under control. If you
can get a can of spray that shoots 30 feet and you can do some killing from a distance too.
Yeah. I love doing that. All right, so let's spit some facts about bugs. Go for it. Summers bring high humidity and lots of standing water. Perfect conditions for those mosquitoes and ticks.
Hey, residents will report thick swarms of mosquitoes at dusk, especially near wooded areas or creeks.
Ticks are common. You need to check your yard work and hiking, especially for families and pet owners.
Brown recluse spiders and wolf spiders are typical house guests during the spring and fall. They're not deadly, but they can really ruin your day.
Now let's shift gears to getting around town.
All right. Let's do it.
This is one of your wife's things, Let's talk about the commute.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I think for the most part, it's going to be positive. But what my wife said is, because she commutes every morning in the rush hour traffic, is once you hit the highways, it's like the Autobahn. She says people are driving crazy and fast. She said the average speed's probably 85 to 90 miles an hour. And she's got a little turbo Audi, so I believe her. She's probably in that lane right there with her.
I'm probably one of the worst offenders, if you ask me. But yeah, probably so. So compared nationally, the traffic here is a gem. But, there are some issues where if you're in a 65 speed limit and most people are cruising 85, sending my son who just got his driver's license out to navigate that scenario is a little concerning. I mean, it does worry me. So if you're coming from a small town, just know that, it could be a little challenging on the highway, keeping up with the flow of traffic.
Yeah, especially like 435 down south in like Johnson County. I think that highway is like probably 6 or 7 lanes wide now on one side, in one direction. And yeah, that's a lot to let your 16-year-old loose in rush hour down there. It's kind of scary.
And Kansas City's highway system offers quick commutes compared to other major metros.
Less congestion overall versus like Dallas, Chicago, or LA. Highway bottlenecks do exist, but we don't typically see gridlock.
Free parking is easy outside of downtown. Many suburb neighborhoods have wide roads and driveways, and you can park on the side of the street, no problem.
For buyers from larger urban centers, the commute is often a huge improvement in Kansas City.
Getting from the Northland to downtown Kansas City can take you about 20 minutes. Try that in Houston or San Francisco. You get your time back, which is huge for your families or for anyone with a busy schedule.
But don't get too comfortable. The driving culture here isn't always friendly, especially if you like to walk or bike.
Yep, Kansas City is not a pedestrian paradise, and drivers are aggressive. That's one of your wife's biggest complaints about the traffic is, it's not that it's jammed up, it's that it's zooming.
Yeah. During rush hour on the way to work, she says the average speed limit's like 85 miles an hour. Gets a little crazy out there. Our walkable neighborhoods, so Max, it's not like super friendly to pedestrians, but our walkable neighborhoods still easy to find in Kansas City?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every neighborhood's going to have sidewalks, especially if they have homes associations. If it's a relatively newer neighborhood, you're going to have sidewalks. I mean, my neighborhood has got people walking their dogs all over the place. They're not cleaning up the dog poop when they poop in my yard, but that's a whole other story. Now, let's talk about those charming neighborhoods. Which brings us to our 10th talking point. Those charming neighborhoods. What about Kansas City? What neighborhoods have the best character, would you say?
I would say we talk about them a lot. Probably like the Brookside, Waldo. Those are kind of the areas just south of downtown. So they're nestled in that kind of the grid with the old trees, that kind of the tree tunnels hang over, and the houses have a lot of charm. Looks like a hobbit town.
Yeah, they're not cookie cutters. What?
Tudors.
Yeah, you got those Tudors. They're anything but cookie cutter. They're very charming, and they've been, kind of added on and changed and modified over the years. So the neighborhood has a lot of charm. That Mission Hills area is really nice, just by the plaza. Even Westport has a lot of charm to it if you're, want more in the condo lifestyle. I guess it depends on your definition of charm.
Yeah, but that's just the old architecture, and it's full of it. That whole area is full of it. But I guess the flip side to that is you are in a neighborhood that's closer to crime because you're in, there's just more people. It's a denser, what's the word I'm looking for? The population density is higher, and we're close to downtown. So crime can be up a little bit, although most of these neighborhoods have pretty low crime. But as soon as you step outside of the borders of these neighborhoods, the crime rate can increase quickly. And then I'll say things like insurance, like car insurance down there is a lot more expensive because you're in those old narrow streets. A lot of people are parking in streets. So you're getting door dings, you're getting crashed into, you're getting broken into. So there's just a lot of costs that go with that.
Small shopping districts, independent restaurants, and a village feel appeal to many buyers.
And there'll be plenty of neighborhood festivals and street parties that really strengthen that community vibe.
There's nothing like a summer stroll through the Oaks and Brookside. You'll feel like you stepped onto a movie set. And these neighborhoods just ooze charm until it comes time to look at those school options.
Yeah, speaking of schools, here comes one of the biggest ambushes for new arrivals. And that is that school quality in Kansas City varies widely.
Yeah, when you're talking right in there in that Brookside, Waldo, kind of old Kansas City area that oozes charm, that is the Kansas City School District. At least on the Missouri side it is. So you really have to watch out for that. Kansas City lost their accreditation, and they weren't getting federal dollars and state dollars for a long, long time. And it was awful. And they have since regained their accreditation, but, it's not just, snap, they're back and they're amazing. It's a lot of charter schools have been developed and private schools in those areas. So a lot of the more affluent residents are sending their kids to private and charter schools and not to the public school district in Kansas City.
Yeah, so if those charming areas are important to you, but so are schools, then you just need to factor that into the budget that you're going to be paying for education. Now, flip side of that is if you get out into almost any of the suburbs around Kansas City, either Kansas or Missouri side, you're going to land in amazing school districts naturally that are just going to be part of the taxes. So definitely keep that in mind if schools are important to you.
Yeah, in fact, there's a road called State Line Road, and when you cross State Line Road, you're no longer in the Kansas City School District when you're down south. Now, all of a sudden, you're in Shawnee Mission School District or Blue Valley School District.
Yeah.
So,
and that's crossing one line, and now you're in the best school district in the whole state of Kansas. So, yeah, makes a big difference.
So now that we're on the topic of bureaucracy, like schools and all that sort of thing, there's one other bureaucratic institution that will grind your gears in Kansas City, and that is the good old DMV.
Welcome to Kansas City. It's a little bit painful. They aren't very friendly. It's a government operation. You just got to follow their rules, and that's how it is. And I don't know how many times it's taken me 2 or 3 trips to get one thing done because I was missing one damn piece of paper. You got your checklist, like, we need 2 pieces of mail, and this one isn't going to work because this isn't an actual bill that has, it's got your wife's name on it. And Zach, I need 2 bills. Anyway, super frustrating. It's not very streamlined. It's just something you have to deal with when you come to Kansas City. So I'm sorry. One last Kansas City special is allergies that are so fierce, even a seasoned Midwesterner breaks out the tissues.
Yeah, those allergies hit hard. I tell you what, I went on a sneezing fit just the other day, and my son was like, "Geez, Dad, what's wrong with you?" I mean, I just couldn't stop sneezing because all the pollen and stuff, and it hits in waves because certain trees or plants will bloom earlier, and then something will bloom later in the season. And I mean, it depends on what your sensitivity is. Ragweed, or I don't know, all the different types of pollen.
Yeah, ragweed, all the evergreens have a lot of pollen, and I don't know what all the allergy ones are, but there's thousands. I mean, your car will be yellow, your hot tub cover is a mess. And it happened until I noticed on Mother's Day, because I just power washed all my deck, that the pollen has kind of stopped by Mother's Day. And then there'll be something new, then we get into the rainy season, and there's mold that's out in the air, and there's always something going on.
Yeah, there is. Even in the fall, when the leaves start falling and everybody's crunching them up, it hits me there too.
Yeah.
Humid climate and thriving plant life contribute to high symptom rates, itchy eyes, sneezing, and runny nose.
Yeah, there's many new arrivals to Kansas City that said their allergies worsened after they moved here.
And those over-the-counter and prescription allergy meds can become a routine for many folks. So if you're still picturing Kansas City as a walk in the park, remember, there's a big learning curve, but for the right buyer, Kansas City is still packed with opportunity.
If you want the real story behind every neighborhood, every fee, and all the local pivots that homeowners face, reach out. We're here to help sidestep these surprises and land the right home for your needs and your family. You can call, text, or email us at the number below. Let's make your Kansas City move the start of something good, not a pile of I wish I'd knowns.
Are you still deciding where to land? Well, this next video breaks down real-life pros and cons of living in Kansas versus Missouri, so you can figure out which side of the state line actually fits your lifestyle. Click through and let's settle the debate.